Our understanding of a moment is that it is a function of time. We relate the average length of a moment to the attention span we can comfortably hold on an average thought. Usually, our attention span on thoughts is just a few seconds. Rarely can we sustain our attention on a thought for much longer. Therefore, we relate to time as an infinite string of moments. When we equate the concept of the moment to the duration of our attention on any given thought, we are unconsciously suggesting to ourselves that the present moment is a fleeting occurrence and will not last more than a few seconds. Could we uncouple the concept of the moment from the fading in and out of thoughts? Let's suppose that the present moment has no relationship to our thoughts, our attention span on our thoughts, or the contents of our thoughts. Can this moment stand on its own? Whether we perceive it as such or not, the answer is yes. It may be hard to abruptly switch off thoughts and be in tune with the moment. It is like trying to hold back a waterfall. Even if we were to somehow contain and stop the flow of water cascading down a waterfall, the water will start to back up further upstream. This may in turn result in a greater force of water wanting to break through the barrier downstream, and in turn we would need to apply a greater proportional counterforce to keep the water back. Thoughts, like water, are free-flowing. If we try to block their flow through repression, a force builds up in the mind, and this force will eventually overcome our willpower and flood the conscious mind with different thoughts that we cannot manage. When thoughts stream in at a manageable pace, they may be easy to deal with. But when thoughts flood our conscious mind using the pent-up force created by our repression of them, they may become unmanageable. Our interactions with everyday thoughts varies from one extreme of benign neglect to the other extreme of repression. Certain thoughts get repressed, others get a prominent place in our mind, and the cumulative effect of this is intermittent chaotic mental activity we call a busy mind. Forget about working towards being in the present moment when there's so much activity in the mind which we cannot easily regulate. Our energies are spent in trying to organize and reorient the mind. This can be a losing battle in many cases, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and mental energy. Ultimately, all of us seek unconditional freedom. Happiness is a byproduct of that freedom. If the freedom is short-lived, so is our happiness. Lasting freedom can be had if we are able to detach our awareness from the mind while remaining awake. In sleep, we do this passively and we're not conscious during this process. We can never be free if we enslave thoughts through repression or be enslaved by thoughts through identification. The elusive freedom, freshness, and clarity that being in the moment promises will always be out of sight when we try to control or when we're being controlled by the movement of our thoughts and our mind. The fact that we cannot hold in our attention any given thought for more than a few seconds or perhaps a few minutes at a time creates an opening which can lead us out of the orbit of our thoughts, and perhaps we can jump into the moment. Some thought patterns are slow moving, others are very fast moving. This difference in speed in the movement of thoughts is like a ceiling fan moving at different speeds. If a fan is moving at slow enough for us to visualize individual blades, we may see the space between them. If the fan blades are moving at very high speeds, we cannot see the individual blades or the space between them. The space between slow-moving thoughts may be easily perceived, but a fast-moving train of thoughts will appear like one continuous motion without breaks in between. We cannot predict at any given moment what the speed of the movement of our thoughts will be. We are able to get our thought train to slow down through various practices and methods that are well established. We will not get into those as it is beyond the scope of this talk today. The enjoyment of the gentle flowing nature of thoughts following a practice to contain and calm the mind, unfortunately, does not last for a few minutes beyond the cessation of the practice. Out of the blue, we may encounter a rapid volley of thoughts related to a past situation that may have been unpleasant. All our efforts preceding that moment may be wasted when thoughts suddenly appear and disturb the peace we have so carefully cultivated. Unlike a fan whose speed we can regulate through a switch on the wall, we cannot regulate the speed of the movements of thoughts easily. A ceiling fan cannot cover the entire ceiling. It needs space all around the blades to move freely and safely. Similarly, thoughts cannot cover the entire space we call the mind. If there is movement of thought, it implies space around these moving thoughts. We are conditioned to keep our awareness on the thoughts and their movement, and rarely do we even consider the space they're contained in. When we start to resonate with any thought that enters the space of conscious perception, we tend to cling on. Long after a thought has left the space where we've had an experience of conscious perception, we try to bring back the same thought through recall, imagination, and projection. Water flowing down a river goes in one direction, and no two handfuls of water are the same. Similarly, thoughts in their natural state flow through the mind in one direction, and each thought is distinctly different from another. We are responsible for bringing them back through identification, storage, recall, and projection. Until we stop this habit of identification, storage in memory, recall, and repetition of thought patterns, enjoying the silence of this moment will be like trying to pluck clouds out of the sky. Such a thing can never be experienced. When we are sitting by the bank of a river, we don't just stare into the water and keep our attention on the flowing movement of water. When we lift our eyes from the flowing water, we may see the other bank, features on the land just beside the bank of the river, trees, plants, and other objects. The stationary nature of the land on either side of a river contrasts with the rapid movement of water down a river. Similarly, the static nature of the space containing thoughts contrasts with the constant movement of thought. The first steps towards entering the silence of the moment involves taking our awareness, which is locked in on the movement in the mind related to thought activity, and observing not just the movement of thought, but also the space in which they are contained. Join me as we explore this topic of being in the moment in further upcoming videos. Thank you for your time.